Everybody, thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Project Connect Community Advisory Committee to order at 5:06 p.m. on Thursday, April 9th, 2026 at the Austin Transit Partnership Office Boardroom at 203 Colorado Street. The first item will be, again, as part of our call to order, to go through our roll call. This is Chair Zhar here, Vice Chair Summers,
I'm here.
Secretary Garza, Ms. Berry,
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Eduardo Alexander Handel.
Here.
Thank you. Jay Blazek Crossley.
Here.
Miss Liz McGehee. Not see her. Mr. Gorse.
Here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Brooks.
Here.
And then Mr. Suits. I don't see either.
Recording in progress.
Okay, that's all of our members. Thank you all so much. With the quorum present, we can get started. I'm hoping, Ms. Berry, that you can lead us through the land acknowledgement as our next item.
Yes. To ground yourself before starting this meeting, it's important to talk about the history of this region. Long before it came to be known as Waterloo or Austin, this region has drawn people here for thousands of years, in part because of our waterways and the wealth of natural resources. This region has been home to the Tonkawa, the Coahuilteca, as well as the Comanche, Lipanapache, Sana, Humanos, and many others I may not have named who are also caretakers of this land. I highlight this history because Native and Indigenous peoples are routinely erased from the conversation, referred to as having disappeared or having been conquered. Native and Indigenous peoples are still here and present in what we now call Austin. The pursuit of white land ownership, profit, and so-called progress has harmed Black, Indigenous, and people of color in this city. The effects of the legacy of settler colonialism, the theft of land, slavery, and genocide are still felt and present with us today. It's vital to keep this history in mind as you do this important work and to make a commitment to stop perpetuating the cycle of violence against Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. I appreciate that. Members, our first item is approval of our March 12th, 2026 CAC meeting minutes. Any revisions or edits that anybody wants to recommend? Not seeing anything. Do I have a motion to approve those March 12th meeting minutes? Mr. Handel makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Crossley. So we have a motion from Mr. Handel to approve the March 12th, 2026 CSE meeting minutes, seconded by Mr. Crossley. All those in favor say aye or raise your hands. That passes unanimously. Thank you all so much. If we do not have any concern from the members, can we go through discussion items first as well? I just don't want to make staff wait as we go through action items. Any concern with flipping the order to take discussion items first? Okay, thank you all so much for being flexible. So we'll start with our first item, which is from the City of Austin. It's the Equitable Transit-Oriented Development Citywide Density Bonus Program update. We have staff present for that. Give us a moment. Giannis has just stepped out. So as he comes back, we'll set that up and have the presentation set up.
Hello?
Well, that's why
I don't think
Okay, members. We're gonna come back, members, back to the meeting. I do want to acknowledge, as we do, we have Constable Suits and Miss McGehee joining us as well. They're both online. Thank you both for joining us as well. And we'll turn it over to our City of Austin staff. Um, can I please ask you to sleep slow? It's okay. We'll figure out time just to make sure our interpreters can follow along. And I appreciate you trying to make time. We'll make it work.
Hey y'all, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're not getting any audio on the Zoom. I don't think.
This is this better? Are you
Can you all
hearing me
hear
now?
us right
Now
now?
I can hear it. Yes.
Okay, sorry
Okay,
about
can you
that.
hear our speaker as well? Lucy, can you please speak?
Hi, this is Lucy.
Yep, got that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll tell you what, you can start. We're
Okay, sorry. Let me reset my own timer as well to keep myself honest. Restart? Okay. So my name is Lucy Hall. I am on the Austin Planning's Equitable Transit Oriented Development System-wide team. We focus on system-wide approaches and regulations that apply throughout the Project Connect system. So as part of this system-wide approach, we're the team that's leading the creation of a new, okay, sorry about that, of a new density bonus program available to certain properties citywide that I will get to in just a minute here. We're calling this the citywide density bonus program. In other briefings, we've spent some time sort of setting the stage, but I'm going to limit that context info today just so we can jump to the proposal. But all of this information can be found on our Speak Up website that I'll share or in the Planning Commission briefing from last Tuesday. And a lot of this context information you all will be very familiar with as members of the CAC. But the key takeaway from this is that Austin is facing an affordable housing challenge. And this can be especially true in light of displacement pressures that can arise in major transit investments like Project Connect. In 2017, the Austin Strategic Housing Blueprint identified this housing need more specifically. And just want to point out on this slide here, it names density bonus programs as just one of many tools to address that need. Here, we're just outlining the different MFI levels or median family income levels that help determine income limits for affordable housing programs. And then this slide is just to indicate that the blueprint shows that the greatest need is really at that 50% MFI and below level, or folks making around $67,000 a year for a 4-person household. And this section is just to introduce folks to density bonus programs and how they work in Austin today, as well as some of their limitations. But the most important thing to know from this slide is that density bonus programs accounted for 20% of total built and planned income restricted units and is only one tool in a suite of tools designed to meet affordability needs at different levels. And because density bonus programs are market-based and can be constrained by their relationship to the market, we usually see them delivering units in that 50 to 80% MFI range, while other tools work better to create housing at deeper levels. A little bit more context before we jump into the proposal here. Interest rates and construction costs are up. Development has slowed. Staff analysis has found that there are some ways that could help increase the consistency and usability of density bonus programs and therefore the delivery of affordable units. And that relies on clarity and consistency among programs, the consideration that taller heights don't always yield more community benefits, and that understanding that their success is geographically specific. And lastly, Senate Bill 840 or SB 840 passed last summer by the Texas legislature now allows residential development by right in commercial office zones, which was once only allowed through density bonus programs. So this is a major consideration in this proposal. And a quick recap of engagement we've heard through other efforts and public comment, although not an exhaustive list. Folks we've heard want to see affordable housing in addition to other community benefits, that tall buildings are more appropriate near transit with mid and low rise buildings further away. There should be a mix of incomes served. Programs should be sensitive to surrounding neighborhoods and existing affordable housing should be preserved. Okay, sorry for just sort of rushing through those slides, but now we'll slow down a bit to get into the details of the citywide density bonus program proposal. So last summer, council directed staff to create a program with a tiered height structure to update or align with existing programs such as DB 90 or density bonus 90, VMU vertical mixed use, and DBE TOD density bonus equitable transit oriented development to allow for more flexibility and allow for more flexibility in decision making and offer a range of additional heights in exchange for income restricted housing. In that request, council also asked that we consider additional heights more or less than 30 feet, what's feasible in current market conditions for affordability requirements, community benefits beyond affordable housing and their market feasibility, compatibility standards, and what those might look like for this range of additional heights, and including redevelopment requirements or unit replacement requirements. So the goals of this new program are to encourage the creation of new affordable housing, provide more bonus options that can be tailored to different neighborhood contexts across Austin, while also making program requirements more consistent and transparent. This would make the application process more streamlined and easier for neighbors near these projects to understand. It accounts for the implications of SB 840 to make sure that proposed program requirements aren't more restrictive than those new by right entitlements. So here's where that tiered piece comes in from council direction. The new program will consist of 5 new combining districts that correspond to different height tiers. What the combining districts associated with each tier could be named in the zoning code are here in this table, and the name of the comparable existing program, if applicable. The first tier offers no additional height, but does relax site development standards. This is similar to the vertical mixed use program. This would be called Citywide Density Bonus Program Base, or DBC, in the zoning string with no numbers. The second tier is a new tier with 15 additional feet above base height, DBC 15. The third tier would be equivalent to our DB 90 and the DBE TOD subdistrict 2 heights. This would have an additional 30 feet, DBC 30. The fourth tier, another new tier, offers 45 additional feet above a base height, or DBC 45. And finally, the fifth tier is equivalent to DBE Todd Subdistrict 1 with a height of 60 additional feet, or DBC 60. With these, we're filling in the gaps in existing programs and replacing other existing tiers with the intention of better corresponding to the market and different neighborhood contexts. The new program would be allowed in commercial zones to include potential future mixed-use base zones that council recently initiated work to create, but no residential or industrial base zones would be eligible for this program. And as many of you know, a density bonus program works when community benefits are balanced with additional entitlements to incentivize mutually beneficial goals. I'll talk more about these components in the next few slides. So affordable housing is the main intent of our bonus programs, and each tier has the same affordability requirements for both ownership and rental. This carries forward much of our recent policy and market analysis, where 10% of all units are required to be affordable for ownership and rental, whether developers are getting no additional height or up to 60 feet. The difference is that for ownership, we're targeting 80% MFI or less and allowing for fee in lieu. And for rental, we're targeting 50% MFI or less and recommending no fee in lieu. Through this new program, the redevelopment requirements, or Chapter 418 of City Code, will apply to all developments that redevelop existing housing with units affordable to households earning 70% MFI and below, to include tenant protections, definitions and compliance measures, and unit replacement requirements. Application of some of these might look like tenant notice when the property will be redeveloped, payment of 4 months rent and fees, payment for moving expenses, right of first refusal for new units, the ability to break current lease without penalty, and the full return of a security deposit to tenants. The part of these redevelopment requirements that differs from DB 90 and VMU is these unit replacement requirements. We've heard concerns from the community about existing naturally occurring affordable housing being redeveloped through density bonus programs. And while this can still happen without a density bonus program by right, we don't want to incentivize it and are therefore raising the threshold for redeveloping these sites. For those qualifying existing multifamily structures, again, renting at 70% MFI or below today, developers would be required to meet the redevelopment unit replacement requirements in existing code, which requires either a 1-to-1 replacement or twice the bonus program unit replacement requirement. This translates to a 10% unit replacement minimum up to a 20% unit replacement maximum. You can sort of, the captions, which are very important, are, I think, blocking the other end of the visual here, but that's, just know that on the other end is 10% and then this end is 20%. Thank you. The subject case could be, this table here sort of outlines how that can be applied in different examples, because it can sort of yield different things depending on what the existing building contains. But the subject case could be a small property where there aren't very many of these units and a 1-to-1 replacement is feasible. Or the subject property could be a large apartment complex with hundreds of units where it is unlikely to be feasible to replace all units, but they might be more able to have 20% of the new units be affordable instead of 10%. The final community benefit that this program requires of developers is to make sure that there's a mix of uses while remaining a primarily residential project. Projects must be at least 65% residential, while the remaining area allowed to be used for non-residential uses such as office, retail, commercial, and restaurant. We didn't want to make this program more restrictive than Senate Bill 840, where 35% of the building's uses could be non-residential and located anywhere in the building. Previously existing programs limited the location of non-residential uses or the number of total floors on which non-residential uses could be located. Commissions and council perceive this as too prescriptive, so this new program provides a standard practice that of the maximum 35% non-residential allowed on any floor, there is a minimum requirement that 75% of that maximum 35% be part of the ground floor street frontage. The site-specific waivers that exist today in DB 90 and DB Todd would continue to be allowed in this program. So in summary, if a developer does all of those things I just mentioned, affordability requirements, tenant protections, unit replacement, and mix of uses, and the property is zoned appropriately, they can access the additional entitlements in these next few slides. I already went through the additional height tiers. The new program, again, will consist of 5 new combining districts that correspond to those different height tiers with the intention that only one tier can be used per property. So meaning that these tiers can't be stacked, which will streamline some of the longer zoning strings that crop up sometimes and help the community understand what's possible to be built near them. Compatibility standards, we're recommending relaxing compatibility standards. This slide shows that all of these compatibility standards are equipped with a 25-foot landscape buffer or no build zone before any height step up, and then step up after 25-foot buffer. But you'll see that the new program falls in between the existing DB 90 compatibility standards and the existing DB ETOG compatibility standards in approach. It allows projects to reach a 90-foot height allowance within the next 25 feet beyond that 25-foot buffer. Although not every project will want to reach the full 90 feet allowed there. After both the 25-foot wide buffer and the next 25 feet, where the 90-foot height maximum would be allowed to begin, the next 25-foot width and beyond would allow developers to realize the full program height or maximum density bonus height. And lastly, we're working with our zoning team to look at land use examples beyond what a site's base zoning may allow, to explore additional pedestrian-oriented uses. This is particularly relevant in office space zones, which have fewer pedestrian-oriented uses nearby. Regarding other potential strategies for affordable housing, staff in the city manager's office has been exploring other ways the city could support affordable housing in addition to current subsidies and programs. Again, in the interest of time, this isn't a part of the citywide density bonus proposal, so I'll forego describing these. But again, they're on our website and a part of the Planning Commission presentation from last Tuesday. I'll talk through a little bit about next steps and then wrap up. We began proposal development in the fall. Slow or okay. Okay. Thank you. We began proposal development in the fall of last year with analysis and listening sessions for a year prior to that. This spring, we've been finalizing the staff proposal and we kicked off community engagement and have had and will continue to have various public meetings and organizational briefings with anticipated council consideration on May 21st. And I really just want to point to our biggest public meeting, which is this Saturday at the Conley Guerrero Senior Activity Center. Austin Housing and Austin Planning are partnering to put on sort of a combination of housing resource fair, but also a space for folks to learn about and weigh in on different updates that can also help support housing affordability. And finally, here's our webpage, speakupaustin.org/citywide-db. Thank you for your patience in my fast talking.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll open up to questions. Before I do, I just want to say what we can do is we'll make sure that these presentation slides are distributed to the members, because I know, because to stay on time, I appreciate staff going through it, but we'll make sure that folks can go through it in their own time and dig into the details. And thank you for having those extra slides. I'll open it up to questions and we'll start with folks in the room. Folks online, I'll get to you all in a second. Anyone in the room who has questions or comments or feedback? Go ahead, Ms. Berry.
Thank you. I look forward to looking at the presentation. It's a lot of information and I know you had a time crunch. So thank you for the information. One of my questions is, I'm curious about the difference in MFI in rent versus own. Why is there a difference between those two?
Hello, Warner Cook. I'm the project manager and work with Lucy on this proposal. So we target MFI for ownership at about 80% MFI, typically because that's when we look at lower MFIs, our housing staff has seen it's harder for low-income homeowners to qualify for kind of the mortgages that would match that. So we have a more difficult time filling units. Although, welcome insight, and I am not the professional on this, but that's what I've been told for why the 80% is kind of the lowest level that we tend to be able to target consistently well and fill ownership units at. For the 50% MFI, that is more achievable for rental because there's not this additional kind of mortgage qualification background check process. So that 50% is really about as low as we think we can go without stacking additional subsidy. And it's meeting where the greater need is in our community. So we're trying to reach as low as possible for that.
Okay. I have thoughts, but my next question is the listening sessions that you guys did in the public meetings. Can you give more information as to where those were held and like kind of how many you had?
So in the first round, when this was originally the ETOD overlay phase 2, we had a few different types of listening sessions. Some were done with developers to understand different constraints. We also had focus groups where we specifically recruited folks that we thought might be particularly impacted by this type of work, especially folks in BIPOC communities and low-income communities or renters or folks who use transit or relied on transit heavily. We also held some virtual meetings just broadly open to the public. And then in sort of this Oh, yeah. And we also had some in-person sort of office hours where we tabled at libraries or different community events. And I think that was everything in that round. In this round, we are doing a sort of different approach since this is an even broader application of a program, but we are having briefings with organizations who request briefings of us. We have the in-person open house coming. We'll have a virtual version, and then the various public meetings that were on the slide prior to that. Codes and Ordinances Joint Committee, Planning Commission, and Council.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. And we can definitely come back as well. Mr. Crossley, did you have any? Okay. Other folks with questions or comments at this time? Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead. No, Mr. Handel, please go ahead.
Let me try to set this up. I know y'all are dealing with direction from council and that defines a lot of like the boundaries of what's going on here, but I can't help but feel that, that there's tensions and goals within the design of programs like this. And we talked a little bit about that bit at the end with was it like other ways to fund affordable housing? But I've been thinking a little bit because I live in District 3, and I saw our council member. He had they had recently made an update to something they called the homestead preservation districts, and I know that probably doesn't really it's not really something that's applicable here is what I'm guessing, but it had me thinking about this idea that these density bonuses are kind of a trade-off between I guess funding now or like benefits now or benefits later, because when we ask for these bonuses, we get some things now, but there's also a sacrifice in terms of the property tax revenue that we get out of those. And I was wondering if the city has considered, and and really when it comes to like some of the goals here, like trying to fund deeply affordable housing and some of these community benefits. And when it comes to these issues like calibration of these programs, like baking a lot of these things into the zoning code in a way that they can't be edited later, feels like it has a lot of hairy problems that we may deal with later. And so I'm just kind of wondering if there's some world where we could instead, right now we're trying to capture some of the marginal value of the height through the density bonus. And like, is there a world where we could capture that marginal value through the property tax revenue that might come out of the other end in a way that offers us more flexibility to fund affordable housing, deeply affordable housing even, or adjust the incentives later on in ways that give us the city and city council more flexibility about, because there's this whole other aspect too, where it's like, when we see the community engagement, people want all sorts of different things, and that may change later, where it's like right now we say we want this much affordable housing, or maybe we need more money later for anti-displacement funding, and it's less about, like we're doing okay on, or like maybe we look in a couple of years and the market rate housing is doing okay for people at 80% MFI or 60% MFI, but it's really like the 40% or 30%, like. Yeah, I hope you can get the question I'm asking here, but is that something that's been explored? Is there anybody in the city like the cities, we talked about, I don't know exactly, the city organizational structure, but kind of is that something the city's considering? Has it been explored? What's legally possible?
That and all of the above approach for what is legally possible, what will work is certainly being explored right now, is what I'll say. I don't know the specifics because I'm not in the city manager's office on what exactly like each one of these items is. But one of them I know is that they're looking at a preservation fund that can help for defraying some of the costs for big capital costs, for instance, or insurance for existing multifamily that might, if you just had a little bit more, you could keep it affordable without needing to demolish and redevelop it from a property owner standpoint. So that's one thing that folks are looking at. Increasing kind of fee waivers and things so we can stack on top homestead preservation districts as well. Like you mentioned, that's something that's moving forward that helps capture some of that property tax value change and redirect it towards affordability and anti-displacement. So the answer is yes. And that's why we did try to emphasize that the density bonus program is really just one tool that works in a specific set of circumstances, but is not by any means like the only thing that we should be exploring.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure y'all are aware of this, but like something that worries me a lot about these is the density bonuses kind of feel like they're very much all or nothing. Where it's like if we get them right, we might get some benefits out of them, and if they're not calibrated, then you kind of get nothing, and you could end up in a situation where you get just as much or more, demolition of natural occurring affordable housing. Like it's kind of like either way, you could end up in the situation where we don't get the benefits that we want out of it. And so I'm just hoping, I mean, I guess it's in a question. I'm just hoping to the city that we can find a way that's like less all or nothing, where it's like maybe some ways we can, no matter what the market conditions are, what the developer incentive, the less based on the whims of the exact developer, but that if something happens, then we can capture some revenue somewhere and figure out a way to help people with affordable housing or things like that. So I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Goris. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is somewhat similar to what Mr. Handel was just saying, and it just something that just occurred to me, and I might also have not entirely grasped what is being discussed, so it could be that. But as I understand it, some of these things are intended not to be used in cases where there's existing affordable housing. And I wonder if I feel like there could be an unintended consequence there where the density bonuses isn't allowed because you don't want to incentivize that. But at the same time, like you were saying, it could still be demolished by right. So it would seem to me that in some cases you might have things that are done by right, and then you end up losing the existing affordable housing and then not getting any affordable housing at all. And I know that people were asking for this, so I don't know that I have any particular advice to give, but I feel like in general, having things that are complicated and with all kinds of caveats, whether they apply or don't. I mean, I feel like that can sort of end up leading to things that we don't want sometimes.
Thank you. We are looking to streamline as much as possible. This is, believe it or not, a very streamlined version of a density bonus program compared to our other existing ones, but feedback absolutely taken, committee member. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I guess I'm really just echoing some of the other folks. I mean, it definitely, we had sort of a constellation of programs as you covered. And I do think that with this program, the different categories or levels are more clearly in communication with one another. That doesn't mean it's not complex. It's still pretty complex. I'm like, oh, like, especially if you don't do this a lot, and I do it some, like learning about amazing zoning rules. So it's definitely still feeling complex. I would say, I guess my first question really is like, in terms of the calibration, which there's been some questions around, what does the market analysis show? I mean, as you covered, we're in a sort of changing market situation in Austin right now in terms of interest rates and development. And like, was this something that we believe developers will opt into under this particular structure? And then how do you assess that? How do you test that?
Yeah. So when I say that there's very slowed down development, what I'm talking about is like new starts and site plans kind of being submitted, folks who are ready to construct. That's kind of been put on pause or on ice or slow because there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of heightened costs, and folks are realistically waiting to see what's going to happen with the world. But what we do still see is folks coming in and doing the prep work. And for a developer, the prep work is looking at potentially rezoning a site, among other things. So we're still getting a lot of zoning cases through the Planning Commission and Council. They're just not necessarily turning into site plans and buildings as quickly as they were in the last 5 years. So we do still think that there's uptake of this program from the rezoning point right now. But as far as market analysis, when we've looked, very little dense housing, like taller buildings are penciling really anywhere outside of about downtown and kind of the domain, the really, bigger areas that we're looking at today. We're not seeing new projects that are starting that are able to even make market rate rents, much less add in the affordable rents. So what we're really trying to focus on with this is setting up a future looking program that meets our policy goals as the market turns around. It'll already be applied on some sites, or more sites may come in, and it'll pencil at that point.
I think you just set up my next question pretty well, which is that, so we know that with the existing programs, like vertical mixed use was mapped, I guess in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, the DBETOD, did I say that right? That was mapped with council action a year or two ago. Some of the other ones like the DB90, I think it's something people request to be rezoned to. So what's the vision for how this would be mapped and zoned? Would this be something that's going to be proactively mapped and zoned on May 21st? I'm guessing not, but how would this be something that developers request rezoning to? I noticed at one point it was called a combining district. Can you speak to some of those things?
Sure. Yeah. All really good questions. So the way that staff is imagining it, this, of course, council could decide otherwise, although that's not anticipated, is that citywide density bonus program would be a paper district. So that means it would just be available in zoning code, and property owners and developers could request to be rezoned into it if they have an eligible base zone, otherwise could request to rezone into the eligible base zone, and the citywide density bonus program. And your second question was, you had one more question. You had
So,
two.
yeah,
Oh, what
combining, yeah, so combining district adds to a base district. Zoning, you have your base district, which might be general office or commercial services. And then sometimes today you add a V for vertical mixed use, or you add a CO for a conditional overlay that kind of restricts the site down. This is another combining district that's kind of an addition of rules. In this case, both restrictions and extra capacity. Yeah, so it is possible that once these tools are on the books, council could direct staff as a future implementation step to go and map these. For instance, maybe some of our ETOD station area plans would be areas that council would say, we have the vision we have for this station area. Now please go consider rezoning properties in that. And it would still go through the standard rezoning property specific notice and protest rights. So I don't want anybody to by any means think that that's anywhere nearby, but that is another future potential.
And if somebody has some of the pre-existing density bonus that they would have access to now, the concern is that those are basically totally deprecated by SB 840, or could people continue to use that? I mean, I guess what happens to the old programs that we're trying to replace?
Yeah, so those old programs, folks that have been granted those entitlements, those bonus programs will still stay with those properties, but they'll then be considered legacy programs where moving forward, they won't be recommended any longer.
Okay, I think I'm following that. Thank you for answering all those questions.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Mr. Brooks, did you have your hand up? I'll go online as well. Ms. McGehee, I saw you come on camera for a second. And Mr. Gonzalez, if y'all have any questions, I'll turn to you first and then come back to the room. Okay, again, feel free to raise your hand or, speak up at any point. We'll make sure that we acknowledge you. Other folks with questions or comments? Mr. Crossley, please go ahead.
I have sort of maybe a comment for us. Just some of these other ideas, I think maybe we should pursue more. And maybe I was thinking maybe the ETOD work group subcommittee should get together sort of on its own some. And so in particular, like looking at TIF things for affordable housing and things like that. And that there are reasons you can't do TIFs. And I do have a bill ready for the Texas legislature to fix that, to have equitable territory development TIFs. But anyway, so I guess that committee maybe should meet and pursue some of this.
Okay, I think that sounds like a great idea, Mr. Crossley. And I'll mention Ms. Erica Leek from the city manager's office, working with ACM Johnson, has been leading that study with a consultant. So, and they did present to the housing committee, so you can go, I forget the date, but you'll be able to see the presentation, but also worthwhile to ask her or folks from her team to maybe talk to you all about some of the programs that they're looking into. Go ahead, Ms. Berry.
I'm just curious. A lot of the letters, numbers, a lot of this is right. It's a lot, right? So how are y'all communicating this to the community in a way that's more digestible and easily understood, especially when you are trying to reach maybe some of the lower income communities that are being affected by it? How are you making sure that it's being explained to them in a way that they can understand it a little bit more than like going to the developer meeting, for example? I'm curious.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I think we're trying a few different methods. One of them is, we're hoping at this open house on Saturday, we'll just be able to be present and answer folks' questions and speak to them face to face, which I think always helps. And we also have some of the organizations that we've been briefing work directly with impacted communities. And we're hoping that in sitting down with these organizations and explaining the proposal to them, they'll be able to serve as messengers for the communities that they serve. But you're right that it's a lot of information. We also have staff contact information on our website. We're always happy to answer people's questions directly that way. We in our virtual open house will be another opportunity for folks to ask questions directly. But yeah, a lot of this is complex information. I think too, we try to follow a lot of different accessibility guidelines, especially in terms of the way that we design our website, to make sure that information is accessible to people, both generally and especially folks who might struggle to process information. And a lot of our information on our website as well is run through different types of like reading level checkers. We generally at the City of Austin, we try to make sure that any text or content that we produce is accessible to folks reading at an 8th grade reading level. So yeah, those are some of the measures, but it's certainly a challenge to try and communicate a complex project like this into more digestible pieces.
Thank you. I'll make this quick, hopefully, and I don't think anybody else has something. One is more of a comment. I do appreciate staff. Well, actually, let me start by honestly just saying thank you for your work on this. This looks really exciting. I know it's a long time coming, and I know it looks complex, but this is way more concise and understandable than our existing bonus program. So good job to all of y'all on that. And what I appreciate was that for the rental units, we still have an on-site requirement. I know there has been quite a conversation to see, is it more appropriate to have fee in lieu for those? I don't speak on behalf of the full CAC, but as a CAC member, I'll just say that I think having some of those on-site units, particularly as it's linked to transit, is really critical. I'll just be honest. I think if we don't have those on-site units, it's hard. We don't have a lot of parcels on Lamar and Burnett where we have our rapid routes and we have light rail coming. To have those units on the ground present, I think is really critical. So I think from the CAC perspective, I really like seeing that. I understand with ownership, it gets a lot more complicated and the fee makes sense. And maybe in other parts of the city for rental fee makes sense. But I think for some of our major transit corridors, light rail corridors, I think having those on-site units is great. And thank you for considering that. One thing I think it's kind of honestly related to what Vice Chair Summers was asking. Can you talk a little bit about, so if I understand correctly, so all of our existing bonus programs remain, we just would not be rezoning something to those in the future?
Correct. And I wanted to be clear about which 2 programs we're recommending become legacy, which is vertical mixed use and DB90, which are kind of more directly replaced by the citywide proposal. Other bonus programs like Affordability Unlocked or some of our, specific like the East Riverside, the North Burnett Gateway, the downtown are potentially being updated through other projects, but are not recommended to become legacy districts.
I appreciate that. And I think the only comment I'll make to that is not immediately, but at some point we might want to come back and reconcile the DBE Todd bonus as well. Just because I was looking at it, I think the compatibility now is slightly different. When I was on Planning Commission, we had this challenge where folks were coming and they wanted to use other bonuses. And we were like, nope, DBE Todd was meant for this purpose. We want to make sure the light rail connection is maintained. So how do we make sure that it remains a competitive program and people do want to utilize it? And the last question I had was, I know other requirements were mentioned. Y'all didn't have time. I'm assuming the streetscape requirements will remain as part of the bonus programs?
Yeah, so this is something that was a recommendation as part of the currently paused density bonus university neighborhood overlay, UNO, but is looking at specifically requiring that the full recommended street sidewalk width from the transportation criteria manual would be required on these sites. So typically the kind of transportation review process for new development, you set what the requirement is, but then you figure out what is roughly proportional to the development's impact. So sometimes you end up with not the full requirement, whatever that might have been. So because this is a voluntary bonus program, we're kind of like putting our stamp down and saying, no, we need the full sidewalk width to really improve that. And in this case, it's always at least as good as what is in subchapter E, but often even better than that because we've got newer regulations in that criteria manual.
I appreciate that. I don't know I don't think I've looked at the new requirements, but that makes sense. Again, from the CAC perspective or the ETOD perspective, we would just want those streetscape requirements to be there for all transit accessible units and bonus programs, because that is critical. We want to make sure, folks get off their bus stop or light rail stop and they have the ability to have a good pedestrian access that allows them to access the buildings themselves. Thank you again. Other folks with questions or comments? Mr. Handel, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just curious, what does it mean for something to be a legacy part of the code? Does that just mean that, a property owner could ask, but staff is just going to say no, but you can still ask?
So what we're imagining is if council adopts the new program on the 21st as part of the same ordinance that they would vote on, it would say that the city would no longer accept rezoning applications into the vertical mixed use and density bonus 9 and combining districts after a certain date,
Okay, so
Days
it
or
would be,
2 weeks or
like
whatever
written
that
into
is.
the code that nobody
But
could
we still
ask
need-
for it.
Yes, but we have to maintain that code language if it still applies to properties because we need to, our reviewers need to know what it said. If that comes in, it could come in next month, it could come in, 50 years from now, somebody still has a V site and they want to use V, they would maintain that.
Right, like you still have to figure out what's conforming to like that and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you again for going through it in timely May. Members, this takes us to our next discussion item, which I'm pulling up here. This is our presentation from the ADP Business Support and Needs Assessment. We have staff and our consultants coming up.
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure I've met everyone because I think there are some new members since the last time. My name is Frances Jordan, and I am the business support public involvement manager with Austin Transit Partnership. I'm coming to kind of give an update about some of the work that we're doing. I'll let Kelly introduce herself, and then I'll give a little bit of update just for some of the new members and get started.
Okay. Oh, yes, I'm Kelly Phelps. I'm working under Francis to help develop the business assistance program for ATP.
And the ATP has been embarked last time I was here. I think I was here in November, maybe. And ATP has been thinking about how we can support the businesses during construction and developing the program. And so when we were here, we actually kind of talked about how we were starting a needs assessment. So that's some of the work that we're going to be talking about today, what we're doing in the community. And then we actually have a pointed discussion. And so we hope to get to that so that we actually can get a little bit of input from you all. To start, though, I'm pulling up this slide. This is actually, we have started some of our focus groups, and this is kind of how we grounded both of them. And I thought it'd be really nice to share with you all. I think this is how we're thinking about it. Construction can affect how people access, perceive, and choose local businesses. Understanding what businesses need and what keeps customers coming back during construction is key to supporting businesses and keeping corridors active. The most effective business support strategies are shaped by real customer, business, and community input. And this is ATP's approach to create a program where the support is practical, impactful, and responsible to real needs. And so I'm going to let Kelly chime in here, is that we've done some research and we've kicked off some of the understanding the needs, but we're also at that point where we're trying to understand the priorities of the program, right? And so we have a little bit more information to kind of actually walk you all through to get some ideas. And so, Kelly.
Sort of frame up program priorities, just to give you guys to be able to conceptualize that. We're talking about who would be eligible to receive the support from the program, what those support services would look like and be, how resources would be distributed. Are there any certain businesses that would be prioritized, and ensuring that the program aligns with not only ATP's goals, but the community priorities.
And some of that is because of the limited resources. We wish we had all of the money to support all of the businesses, but some of that needing to find the priorities because we do technically have limited resources.
Yes, thank you. It'll help define so we can utilize that with the biggest impact. So we're finding that the priorities really fall into two different categories. One being core priorities, that these will reflect the ATP's goals. They're very strategy driven. What the strategy of the program would be, informed by community input, and then also by best practices of this same type of program that have been implemented across the country. Area-specific priorities are specific to this area. They help refine the core priorities, are data-driven. So we're taking a lot from the needs assessment to help inform the area-specific priorities. And they can also reflect not only the business and community feedback, but local economic conditions, cultural priorities, and the current political climate. Oh, thank you for this. I forgot we were doing that. So then to better help everybody understand, we've provided some examples. So these are in no way what has been determined for this specific program, but to help you understand more, what we're talking about, the core priorities could look like where you're located on the corridor. I mean, oftentimes the most impacted businesses are the ones right on the alignment. Operating prior to construction, making sure that they're in operation and healthy, and that it's really the construction that's impacted them. Small businesses, the one prevalent aspect across all the revenue loss related to businesses during construction has been that small businesses are the most vulnerable. So many of the programs have prioritized small businesses. Customer facing, often businesses that have a strong online presence and customer base aren't potentially as impacted as those that require that pedestrian walk up customer. And also some programs require the show of revenue loss. So no support would come until after they've shown that they've been impacted by the construction. And then also the requirement for a business to provide their business license and tax compliance, and that's business tax compliance. And then some examples of where area specific priorities would help inform would be prioritizing legacy or cultural businesses, minority-owned, locally owned businesses, potentially historic protection, industry vulnerability, not only in general, but specific to this area, specific corridor conditions, and any other considerations that we're going to glean from the needs assessment. Okay, sorry. And then as we further refine the program priorities and the eligibility approach, we're really in an information gathering phase. So as Francis mentioned, the needs assessment will funnel and help inform that, as well as ATP's values and priorities, which we're hoping to get some feedback from you all today on that. And then benchmarking, understanding best practices, what has been utilized across the country and has been actually worked.
Yeah, and so we're just going to talk a little bit about what we've started with the needs assessment. So this is kind of just the beginning of some of the information we got from our focus groups and just the kickoff of our block walking and survey. And just for those who maybe haven't seen this slide, so this is overall what we're kind of doing for the needs assessment. We had focus groups. We're starting to reach out to potential partners or thinking about who we want to partner with, and business block walking, survey distribution, really trying to feed and get the needs for the assessment. Ooh, uh-oh. Something happened where... There we go. And so just to kind of highlight what we did for the business focus group and the community focus group. For the business focus group, we really talked about top challenges and needs during construction, and then also wanted to get support ideas from businesses about different ways that we could support them, whether it's marketing, operational, promotional, and training. And then also thinking about resource and collaboration ideas. And some of those are ideas that they've already kind of do now, or things that could necessarily be help. So thinking of different things that they've done. And then we had a community focus group, which was really good in the sense of like, we think it's really important to understand the needs of the businesses. That's definitely a priority, but we also thought it was really important to hear from the community, like, how would you show up? And it's one of the really, and I think highlights was talking to the community about how they supported businesses during COVID, and then what makes it harder to support businesses during construction and what are the differences. And so that was a very lively conversation, but wanting to understand how people go about supporting businesses, but also thinking about the barriers, and got lots of good input about why they avoid construction areas. And then thinking about the different incentives and motivators that they already do. And we also got a lot of information about communication and how they get the news, or how do they get things about events and stuff so that we can kind of think about this in our program. And so some of the specific feedback that we got from businesses in terms of things that help support them. One of the things that we heard were the emphasize the need for grants. This was something we hadn't really thought about, but like the idea of having a grant writer, access to a grant writer to help with government grants and different things for businesses. And we had a difference of discussion when it comes to low and zero interest loans, but it was really good for us to hear for the people who would be interested versus those who might not be interested. We also got to really dig into what strategic and operation support would be useful, business strategy, marketing, legal assistance, PR, and e-commerce support, right? So there were businesses that were talking about how they don't have an Amazon store set up and how difficult it is. Could that be a potential service? Talking about website and marketing ideas. The other things we talked about were like shared events and programming. You know, it was very obvious that they were like, yes, if there were events that we just showed up to and we didn't have to help plan, like those kinds of things, but also thinking about the type of events that actually work. And then this was probably, as you all might suspect, this was like honestly the most part where we got the most input from the businesses about how are you all communicating? Can we get the information early? Is there a single point of contact? I think that was something that was very important. And then also just how we can knowledge share across agencies. You know, there's a lot of construction happening, going to be happening. And so just some of that as well. And then for the community focus group, we kind of had some themes. And I don't know if that's the first bullet point, but just a similar but different input. I think access and parking and mobility constraints. It was really nice. We had a good variety of the community. We had college students. We had ACC represented. We had bus and bike users, which was really good to talk about that. We had churches, we had community leaders, like we had a lot of diverse groups who were able to kind of give us different ideas around access and talking about programming and promotion and marketing and visibility. One of the things that we liked to hear was talking about how can we Disneyfy construction and make it so that there's something fun or there's like something that makes you not feel as nervous or threatened by construction, and thinking about values-driven and relationship-based support. So some of that really dealt with how can we provide support before construction really, like some of the heavy construction really starts, like how can we make people aware of the businesses and kind of get the word out well before anything happens. And I think that's this idea of trying to get the program up and running before then. And then the other big themes that those last three, really digging into like construction impacts and understanding what information or their experience during construction, really understand how ways in which we can help make sure that people visit businesses during construction. And then some of the comments, I think, are things that we've said, but I'm in the interest of time, I'm gonna keep going, but we've kind of said all of those things. And then just so you all know, we have started Block Walk, and we actually started Monday of this week. And so what that entails is that we're going to all the business on the alignment right now. We have this card that says light rail is coming to Austin. And then it also talks about how we need information. It's already, we're doing a lot of education. They're like, oh, what light rail? Is this really happening? Like those are some of the conversations that we're already having. But also, honestly, it's really good to already start relationship building because some of the businesses are like, oh, wait, so does that mean I have to go somewhere? And it's like, no, you're going to be here and we're trying to build we're trying to help support you during that. So I think it's already being useful. And we already have 8 surveys, which I think is exciting that we've only been out for 3 days and we already got some good input. And so we will be block walking for the next couple weeks. And on the last week, we actually will be going out. When we go to South Congress, we'll also be going out to Riverside. And we will be going with the City of Austin's East Riverside Planning Group. Their project manager is going to come with us because we really, I think for us, and just this is sharing with this group, we really are interested in making sure we get input from the Riverside corridor. It's been a little bit harder to try to, so we're joining with the City of Austin just to make sure we build this program that we have the input from all communities that would be impacted. And so they're going to we're going to kind of do it together because they're doing a lot of public meetings as well on East Riverside. And so really just trying to hear from the business community in that area as well. And then I'll hand it over to Kelly.
Yes, okay. So as we further define ATP's values and priorities, we'd really appreciate to hear from you all, your thoughts. So we've kind of come up with 3 concepts that, in the interest of time, if we could hear your opinion on at least one. The idea of the program being consistent versus flexible. So should the program cover the corridor equally, or is there sections of the corridor with unique needs where that flexibility needs to come in and how businesses are supported and served? Depth versus reach. Does it make more sense for the program to help fewer businesses more deeply or more businesses more lightly? And then the concept of early versus impact base. Does it make sense for the program to help businesses before construction even starts, to help them get prepared versus having them show and prove an impact and wait for that to happen? Or does it make sense for the program to hone in on those that have proven impact so that we can ensure that the assistance gets focused to the right businesses?
Yeah, and the only thing I will add to that, so that we're just looking to get input about any of the ideas that we're kind of talking about that would be helpful. What would be, I think we've been talking to other folks, we're talking about what does success look like, those kinds of things, like how in your mind, as some of the things that we've talking about would be really important for this program to do during construction, with the idea that it's 7 to 8 years and the resources for that. So stop talking. If anyone wants to jump in first.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll open it up to Ms. Summers. Did you want to go ahead? Ms. Summers, jump right in.
Sure.
And maybe we can, I'm trying to think this through. Maybe we keep this up. What I would say is virtual CAC members, please go ahead and either raise your hand or just unmute and speak if you have a question or a comment, because can we, just because I think if folks are responding to it, let's keep that up. But again, for folks online, we won't be able to see you. So just unmute yourself and start speaking, and I'll make sure that you're on stack. Ms. Summers, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have some thoughts on the consistency versus flexibility question. So one of the things that came up in our prior discussion was that conditions across the corridor are not entirely symmetric. Some of the there's multiple very valued cultural and commercial districts on these alignments, right? And some of the corridors have very organized business associations already, university area partners, or, South Congress merchants, things like that. And I think we honor that, right? Very much. But there's other corridors, like one that's come up a lot, where there's a lot of local business and small business, and also a really big impact is East Riverside. And so I think that I would not support a standardized approach. I think we want to nurture the partnerships and, business groups that already exist and that are already expressing their needs. And I think that's really, really valuable. But I think other folks don't have that same asset in terms of having an organized group. And so perhaps one outcome that I've thought, and I don't want to limit it to just Riverside, it's just one that comes to my mind. There may be others I'm not thinking of, but perhaps working with those merchants and businesses to form that similar type of group could be an outcome of this. So I would not support standardized necessarily in this situation, just knowing how greatly there's just such different diversity in districts across these corridors.
We've heard that. I just want to tell you, we've heard that suggestion. And I think that is something that we want. Does that feel good? It's okay. That's the kind of effort that can be put into East Riverside, because of the opportunity there. It really seems like a need worth pursuing.
There's some real vibrancy there too. Not too long ago, I went to a concert over there, which was actually a K-pop concert. And we went out, we walked around and we went to eat, and we were like, oh my gosh, there's so many great places to eat here. You don't necessarily think of that, or maybe you should think of that. Maybe we can start people getting to think about that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Anyway, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't know that I'm going to respond to some of the other questions, but one thing that I just want to say out loud while I have the mic here,
one of the things since we talked to y'all last time, I know that the city of Austin, economic development, when we were talking about some of our anti-displacement funding and tranches, there was coming up some needs that group sees. And so I was like, I know with, like, for example, the ATP works really closely with transportation staff, but like maybe those are bridges that we need to build between y'all's team and Austin Economic Development. I know y'all are surely working on that, but we have heard that they feel needs that they need to meet. And so just making sure that y'all are coordinating to the extent possible. And then once we're assured of that, then also Austin Economic Development can more clearly make requests that they may have. So I don't know if I said that clearly, but just another note that there's a little bit of like a partner stakeholder that also needs to be included there as well. And this is really a comment, but I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Bray.
This is great. I love it all. In terms of the help your businesses more deeply or more businesses more lightly, I'm wondering if it could be like a phased approach. So you start off at the same level for everyone and then see how they're responding to it. And in the second phase, you can see those that need a little bit more. And I think almost to what Vice Chair Summers was saying is, communicate very well from the beginning that there are limited resources. So we want to be helpful, but understand that the more, like if you don't really need it, like share with everyone else, right? And hopefully people won't take advantage of that and they'll see, okay, well, at least we're here and we know some people are, not quite where we are. So let's step back and let them get a little bit more to like kind of catch up. So I think a phased approach would make sense for that.
Interesting. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Crossley.
I'd like to make the case for consistency, although I hear the point, and I think it makes it like whatever we do needs to reach the small businesses on East Riverside. So whatever we do, have to figure out how to do that. But like, more low-income people have jobs in downtown Austin than any other similarly sized piece of land anywhere within 100 miles by far. And if we interrupted all of those restaurants, a lot of people would suffer. And so it's similarly University Area Partners and similarly South Congress. And so I think the strategy of not messing up businesses that are people's livelihoods, I don't know. I don't like the idea of choosing which businesses are more deserving of support. And like, even I'm saying that there may be larger businesses that seem great. I don't know. Anyway, so I think there's an argument for consistency, and there may be things that will work in both places. And then I really think on the early versus impact, I just saw one of your metrics said like qualifications, revenue loss, and like we don't want that to happen. We want to get there before that. And there's I think there's a lot of neat opportunities in this kind of instance to do things before the revenue loss might hit. And so I would hope, and so in a way, if we had fancy metrics of everything, estimating future revenue loss would be the ideal, as opposed to waiting for you to be screwed and then we'll come out.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Well, and I don't think that we want to think about it like business being more deserving than other ones being deserving. I think there definitely will be, when you talk about a phased approach, though, there will definitely be parts of the program that pretty much will be for all businesses, right? There are, some of the events and promotional, some of those things will be able to provide for any businesses. But there are components where we're talking about if we have the opportunity to do direct financial assistance, that's really where we do kind of have to have priorities, and not necessarily because a business is more deserving. It's like we will kind of have to like set like a benchmark, right, for that. And that's more of what we mean. Just want to make sure that's clear too as well.
And maybe that's where I like, if it's sort of qualifications of being small business and family owned, there are a lot of small businesses that are like tucked into a giant fancy retail tower, know, and like they're down to their university tower. There's very small family businesses.
Right.
And so they should count.
Right. Exactly.
But that maybe the big box store. That's not what we're talking about. So that if the qualifications are based on like you're the type of business we're trying to make sure isn't totally lost here, as opposed to locational.
Yeah.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Go ahead.
Oh, hey there. So I was just, thank you for your presentation. I was just hoping that you could clarify what you mean by a couple of things. So, and I guess like the needs or core priorities, you mentioned political climate and industry vulnerability. Can you tell me more about what that looks like? Or how you're thinking about that?
I'm trying to think of an example.
You said, well, industry vulnerability, I do think, I mean, I think there are, even this is something that we've heard from businesses here, is that some businesses feel like hospitality isn't going to be as impacted as much as retail because people are going to go to their favorite restaurants, right? So I think that's what we're talking about. Some people feel like they're going to be more impacted to construction. And so that's why and we're still trying to get input about that because, you know, I think we all have to ask ourselves, would you go to your favorite restaurant? It was in the middle of a construction zone. But more people talk about they'll go to their Walgreens, they'll go to something that they need, like a grocery store. But you know, I don't want to say a luxury, but some of the things you do for entertainment, you might not be as willing. So that is a little bit of that industry vulnerability. And then climate, I think, political climate.
Yeah, I mean, that goes a lot to do with like available resources. There's a lot of past programs that have been able to partner with the Economic Development Group and utilize some systems they have and finances up there. And things like that, like what's available currently and how that can be best utilized.
And more specifically, like some of the programs across the country, their cities have helped fund some of the programs, right? And so it's not necessarily always a huge dollar amount, but there are matching dollars for some of these programs. And so political climate also can kind of be that financial climate, as we know in the city of Austin right now when it comes to budget.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess like as a follow-up to some of what other committee members have been discussing. So it sounds like you're gonna do a survey and you're building relationships with businesses. And I'm just wondering like how are you gonna like accumulate those needs and how are you gonna message them back? And are you thinking of like all of the obviously like when thinking about like consistency versus flexibility, like how much are you thinking about all of the businesses along the corridors, like, you know, like one cohort, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yes. So a couple of things. So we have a survey that we're trying to get everyone on the corridor. And so when we say we're going block walking, we're literally trying to go door by door. And then we're also going to be trying to email and just trying to get people to do that. So and we have some qualitative questions and we just want some data questions just to answer that question. And then in terms of consistency and consistency, I think some of the things that there are particular services in the sense of like we do hope to have like a business support office of some sort where we actually have dedicated staff, and some of the work that some of those staff members would do would be the same across corridors for businesses, right? There are just some things that some businesses don't need. Like not every business needs help with their website. Not every business needs help with marketing and all that kind of stuff. But some of those resources could be kind of available to any business that needs them, right? And so wouldn't necessarily would have to be based on eligibility criteria, or that's kind of what we're trying to get from you all, like what things might not make sense to have eligibility criteria because you want to maybe make it available for any business along the alignment. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGehee. Other folks with questions? Oh, sorry, Ms. Berry, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that question you just asked, one thing that I think is interesting is some businesses may think that their website doesn't need help, but there still is a lot more. So
that's a very interesting thought. I hadn't really thought about that.
I mean, that's not a dig at anybody. I'm just saying like sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you may think like maybe it is great, but there's still so much more that you could do with it.
Correct. Yeah. So there's the idea and vision of having like a triage process, right? Where you can assess the business and somebody that on staff that can offer up that perspective gently that, you know, your website's wonderful, but maybe we could help you do this to it and enhance it and correct. So definitely, they might not even know there's help that they need. And hopefully that can be reached through the program and that connection.
Mr. Handel, please go ahead.
Yeah, and then this is not my question, but I at least thought that, you know, to add on to a little bit, it may be the case that people's websites are fine for their current situation, but then they might be more dependent if there's construction going on people being able to go to the website and find out, are you open? Can I order from you remotely and pick up or deliver? All these questions that, like, if all their customers get confused in the future, then they might not know. So I think that, you know, I think that backs up the point. But I did have an it's kind of a tough topic because I feel like we just got done. You know, we're discussing a lot at the same time, this like ETOD and the density bonuses stuff. And so there's this conversation going on at the same time while we're like trying to change the built form of the corridor as well, you know, and so we have strip malls and parking lots. And so I have this thought that, you know, is there any way that we can make it more likely that if there is, you know, redevelopment and where some of these businesses are, that they're more likely to survive that transition somehow? I mean, because we have something similar going on in my neighborhood where, you know, there's a nice little section of local businesses in the neighborhood. And I think, I mean, there's a great project going in with a LifeWorks in the Go Valley neighborhood, but like, you know, I think it had something to do with, there was a plant nursery and there's a grocery, like Native Grocers there. And so I'm sitting here thinking, you know, wouldn't it be great if the city could somehow help it so that somehow at the other end of this, you know, Native Grocer could be an occupant of whatever development comes through. And I know that's like a really tough ask because the business has to survive, you know, like construction time, but like maybe they relocate. Is there consideration of that? And then maybe also there's like thought I have about, you know, how do we know if I assume like these programs have commercial design standards. Do we know if those are appropriate for the businesses? You know, I can imagine it, you know, I don't want it to be a situation where we find out later that some of these businesses could have survived if the way we had built, you know, like the first floor ground retail or something had just been a little bit different, you know, like maybe they needed smaller spaces, or maybe they need bigger spaces. I just don't know. And I'm not an expert on how the, you know, the zoning efforts play into that. But I do know, for example, even along East Riverside, I've seen there has been some existing redevelopment and there's like vacancy there. And I don't know exactly how it ended up that way. What is the problem that businesses have operating in those spaces? Like, is it just a market thing, or is there something that we could have done to make it more likely that some local businesses could have like taken up residence there? I don't know. Is you know, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so that is actually something we're thinking about. And when you think about redevelopment, or to your point, new development or growth, I mean, I think that is something where the majority of the corridors, you know, the idea of supporting a newer business or a redeveloped business might not be advantageous, but say if you had different eligibility requirements, say on the East Riverside corridor, where you did allow for support for newer or redeveloped businesses, what's the temperature for that? So there are programs across the country that have considered different eligibility per corridor for this reason, because when you look at, like, say, South Congress, that has deep historical businesses, the idea of supporting newer businesses makes everyone cringe. And I didn't say that as in like that's something we're going to do. I did not say that. So I don't want anyone yelling at me. But say on Riverside, if that is something where redevelopment, where vacant spots are being filled, is that something ATP should consider, is providing support for things that might be redeveloped or developed during the life of construction? Because that actually can happen and does happen on some projects. And that's some, I don't know if that's what you're saying. I feel like that is a little bit of what you're saying, but
I'm a little confused myself because I don't know exactly what the tools are. So, you know, it's, Not an expert, so like part of me thinks. I mean, I do know. I'm worried if it's because I do think when it comes to like requiring things and like the density bonus and things like that, then you're like start asking questions of like, well, are we taking away from affordable housing if we require these things on the zoning end? So I was wondering if there's like other. Because those things will always be in tension when you're trying to do those things. So I was wondering, if there's any sort of funding or help, or I just don't know what we can do. It's an open question for me. So like I don't have, like I said, I'm confused on it too. So I was just wondering if there's anything that we can help with that transition at all, or then is that something that we can ask businesses about? I mean, it's probably a tough topic, so I don't know if I want it's something easy to bring up, where it's like, we're trying to help, but there's a possibility that you're, the landlord could eventually sell the property and something could happen. And it's like, I don't know, that's a tough conversation to have. So I just don't know if it's being had or what we can really do about it. Maybe there's not a ton, but I just wanted to ask.
Jay, do you?
Mr. Crossley, go ahead.
Well, sort of building on that and just think like, there's a scenario where what we're doing is changing the whole region such that there's abundant opportunities and 10 times as many people live at some of these stations, and there's 10 times as many sort of business opportunities or people wanting to have lunch. And so not just envisioning these programs to help them understand how their website can work during construction, but when there is a light rail line and your customers are now times 10, and can you add a patio? And so there is an opportunity, but then, maybe we need the scenarios. There's a scenario where things don't go as well and it's just as some bad construction and then sucks, and so just like, but there's a scenario where this is a much better world with a much better market. And we help these businesses be part of that,
Yeah, I like that.
Ms. Berry, go ahead.
Just to add to that, the other thing taking into consideration about Riverside is the construction on 35 that's affecting Riverside, right? So Riverside's going to be doubly impacted with construction. Just throwing that out there. I know that's not y'all, but just saying that that's another thing to take into consideration of them being affected as businesses. And I don't know what you can do with that, or if that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, but I'm sure they may get hit harder. I don't know.
I think all the alignment in general, not only I-35, but if you think about just for downtown, even at on the drag, I mean, there's so much private development as well that's happening. So, I mean, I think we're thinking about we're trying to help support that in that way.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm just going to make some quick comments.
Yep.
And then just move along. What I was going to say, I think I'm sort of in this conversation as well, looking at flexibility versus consistency. And I think there might be some flexibility need just because we have very different kind of businesses and corridors, right? Like I'm thinking downtown versus the drag versus SoCo versus Riverside. Just the flavor of those areas is so different. And the other piece of it is like, I'm thinking when we're thinking about that, right? Like for downtown, DA is doing like a really good pop-up program. They're already trying to do something. Does that maybe mean that we don't need that same level of support? There's a ready partner in downtown. So maybe more focus can go elsewhere where there might not be a ready partner available. Similarly, I was also thinking, I think in that sense, one thing I just want to be very conscientious on for Riverside, applies to other places as well, including drag, is just food trucks. I think that's just how do we wrap our heads around more mobile businesses that are mobile, but also not mobile because they have an audience or like a customer base. It's just challenging to think about that. How do we sort of tackle that, particularly with Riverside? I'm going to second what Vice Chair Summers was saying. I think it might be worthwhile to check in with Austin Economic Development to see, because of several years now, I want to say 4 or 5, I can't even remember, they had tried to look at it just to make sure that we're aligned with them. So ATP's work is aligned with them. There's no duplication, right? ATP is doing the work that makes sense. And then the last thing I'll just say on the last one, honestly, how do we look at demonstrated impacts versus not? I mean, I can see both ways. To Mr. Crossley, your point. One thing I'll just say, it's not exactly related to that question, but I think is important is just from a timeline perspective, how do we have a conversation about realistic expectations? And what I mean by that is we saw this really early on where when we, even with the survey that y'all are doing, which is great, when you put it out there, people are like, oh my gosh, construction starts tomorrow. We're going to be displaced. How do we tell folks that this is pre-planning ahead of time, right? So if we are doing a program assistance or any conversation ahead of time, we need to really be clear with folks that what we're talking about is 2027 impacts, right? Those impacts won't start until 2027. And on their specific part of the corridor, it might not be exactly.
Right.
So I think just having a very realistic expectation, because we did see early on when we were doing planning and everything, I think folks see a news article or folks see a meeting and they see a map and they're like, oh gosh, this is happening. So I think just the nuance of how it's all going to be very staggered. I think we're just making sure we're very realistic with folks on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, in the interest of time, thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
If you all have any other ideas, send them to Giannis and he'll get them to us.
I appreciate it. This takes us to our next discussion item, which is for the Riverside Grove conversation. And we do have staff from the city of Austin here to talk about that site update. Can start whenever y'all are ready. You'll press the buttons, the red light comes on.
This one. Now it's on. Hi, everyone. Christine Frundle. I'm a redevelopment project manager with the City of Austin in the redevelopment division. Brian's going to introduce himself, but I did want to introduce some other folks that are here from the City of Austin. We have Shaw Villiere from the Housing Department, and also Margaret Shaw, who is assisting on this project too.
Like Christine said, I'm Brian Carroll with Jones Lang LaSalle, who's going to talk you through this, and I have a team of people lovely over here as well. So I'm just going to give you an overview of kind of our work to date, where we've been, where we're going, what we're talking about here. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get the laser to work, but try to describe it as best I can. What we're talking about here is a large 125 acre, it's actually 3 parcels that were purchased by the city, that is near the Grove station at Grove Riverside, which is why we're here. So you can kind of see East Riverside runs, and that's kind of where that station is, and then Grove kind of cuts in down towards the office building there, which is occupied by the city. And then you've got CTEC, which is kind of all the way to the south, which is that little square-looking building kind of on the right-hand side. The top parcel was purchased by Austin Housing. That's outlined in red. And then the kind of southern 2 to the south of Grove were purchased by the city. And like I said, there's the office building that's occupied by the city. So it's in total, it's 125 acres. We're going to get to in a second what's kind of developable and what's not, and some development strategy. JLL has been hired by the city to help manage the redevelopment of that. And as part of that, we did a lot of things around, we did a lot of work around identifying the city's objectives, what can be done with the way that the property was purchased from the perspective of what those funds were used for. How are we advancing affordability? How are we preventing displacement prevention, economic development? That's another objective we've kind of identified with city staff, and then providing an excellent transit-oriented development on this site is also an objective. So that's kind of been our approach so far, is to sort of help the city understand the different parts of the city that are involved, the governance process. We've done a market analysis, which I think we've heard a little bit about feasibility in this market. We did a rather extensive due diligence on the site, which I think we'll get to that in a moment as well. And then we've got community engagement strategy. Phase 1 was the community engagement strategy. Phase 2 is the execution of that strategy, and we're in the middle of that as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So some key takeaways from this first phase. First of all, really good news that a lot of that parcel is developable. Of the 125 acres, theoretically 100 is developable. What is not developable, we're going to get to what we're affectionately referring to as the zebra map in a moment, but there's some environmental features there that kind of create some undevelopable parcels. You'll see exactly what I mean when I change slides. We have been communicating with ATP on a variety of things. We'll get to that coordination in a moment, but we just got out of a meeting a moment ago talking about utilities and introducing new team members, et cetera. So we've got pretty extensive coordination there. From a market analysis perspective, we've been focused on multifamily development with retail as a part of that. You guys heard it before. There's some development headwinds here. Currently, market rate multifamily is not feasible in this as our feasibility assessment goes. But that's not the only focus of this development. There's affordable housing, there's retail, and there's other things that will advance it, as well as a myriad of infrastructure projects. And then lastly, on the key takeaways here is community engagement. We've sort of set a plan. So we've started to march down the road of some of these. We've had some listening sessions. We've had some large format meetings. We've had some virtual meetings. We've had a whole host of meetings where we're trying to hear from the community. And our strategy going forward is to continue those until the developer theoretically takes it over. So this is what we're calling our zebra map here. That big yellow stripe down the middle is most of the area that's not developable. The red is largely a heavy grade, so we just have to. There's just some things we have to work around. The yellow is theoretically it's roadways, although not all of those. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, green. Yeah, the green is Austin Strategic Mobility Recommended Roadways. The left two it's like an either or. It's not both. We've done some preliminary work on this, and at least we think Faro and what's the name of that other road there?
Riverview.
River's Edge. River's Edge. Thank you. River's Edge will connect all the way down through. And you can see kind of at the top, you can see a big green block that is on East Riverside. That's the rail station. So just to sort of orient everybody up there. Do you guys want to jump in with any questions on this map? Anything?
The yellow is that a creek? What is the yellow?
It's both a creek and the offset as critical environmental features. So that's an unbuildable area that needs to be maintained environmentally.
And is there, sorry, real quick on that. So is there a certain amount of feet from the creek that?
Yes, it's typically a 30-foot offset from the center line of the creek.
The creek is the lines that run through that yellow. Yeah.
But that could be used for like public space or parkland or a trail or some other kind of.
Typically not parkland, so I don't want to promise that, but it's definitely being considered as an environmental feature, and it's an opportunity to provide connectivity, potentially through trails.
Okay.
Yeah, and a network. It's a really, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Anyway. Rainfall in the Austin area is certainly unpredictable, probably increasing. This is the early planning stage. Is 35 feet enough?
That's a really great question. And we're working closely with the city's watershed department. So we're making sure that this is in compliance with the new mapping, flood mapping for Atlas 14 that were created through the federal government. But we can definitely take a look. We'll be looking to them to provide guidance on forecasting for what the requirements will be as far as the offsets in the reservation. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I had the experience of a microburst in Austin that rendered us without electricity for 5 days. What happens when the next microburst or the one after that occurs in this area?
I I hear you, and we are working closely with the watershed department to try and identify what
It's
the
something to be
requirements.
concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
So just to focus here for a moment on community engagement, the first phase of our work was to set a strategy. The second was to carry that strategy out. We're not complete with that. I don't want to talk about all this. I just want to say that right now we're in kind of this phase where, as we had envisioned in phase one, we were going to do a couple of meetings. We were going to do some listening sessions, and then we were going to sit down and strategize about, did we feel like we connected with the right folks? Do we feel like we, we're hearing consistent messages, et cetera? Do we feel like we've kind of done what we need to do and we can move on, or do we need to continue that? We're still in those conversations right now. I think it's possible that we expand our efforts, but we are being responsive to what we're hearing. And just so everybody's understanding, what we hear in the community engagement will make its way into a procurement. And what we would typically do is ask the developers, one, agree to certain base metrics, but then two, respond with how they will meet those community objectives. And then that would be part of that evaluation. So you would say, okay, these people understand what the community has said. They understand that's part of their development. There's sort of minimum gating items. And then also, they're going above and beyond with ongoing strategies and meeting those objectives. And so, they get more points in that selection. So that's kind of how that works. We are also doing a lot of work on the utility integration to the point we just talked about watershed. I won't go through all of this. This is the meeting we were just in to just kind of talk about what are the betterment requests that are occurring in this area right now? Do they reflect the demand that is going to be created by this development? And if they don't reflect those, do we need to make those betterment requests now? So we're trying to use the strategy of dig once. And so that's kind of what our efforts right now are trying to make sure that we're being judicious with any dollars spent on this. So just to reflect, we're sort of in phase two at this point. Phase one, site due diligence, making sure that the project has good governance, market and feasibility, and then creating a community engagement strategy. Phase two is carrying that strategy out, doing some additional site planning, some financial analysis with more real cost estimates, and then doing a transaction strategy and a transaction structure. Transaction structure and procurement strategy for how they would procure a developer. So that's kind of our update, and I think we'll take questions.
Thank you very much. We'll open it up for questions or comments from Mr. Crossley. Please go ahead.
I guess I have two. One tiny one on that slide about utilities. It said proposed 4-inch gas main. Does that mean natural gas for oven stoves? And that's just an odd thing these days to installing gas infrastructure.
These are the plans that are part of Austin Transit Partnerships. So these are their construction plans. We're not, we haven't gotten to the point of assessing that for the
development, but it's there.
Yeah, we're not to the point where we're assessing, utilities for the site.
The other thing is just, I wonder what the scope of this community input. I think it's unacceptable to have publicly financed land to have any kind of limits on height and density. Are you entertaining the idea of asking people that they don't want as many people to be allowed to use this space?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Is it possible that part of what the community input process would say is we don't want buildings taller than X, or we want to not allow these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a spectrum of input on from low density single family to higher density advocacy around the transit station. So that's one of the things we're working through right now on community engagement, is balancing what we're hearing into one vision that represents frankly, the majority of people that we're interacting with. As far as entitlements, the site is already zoned East Riverside Regulating Plan, and it is part of one of the legacy density bonus programs that would allow up to 120 feet of height at this intersection. It was a long contemplated stop back in 2014 when they were looking at rail back then. So we would be looking, we're balancing transit-oriented development with placemaking and transitions into the existing neighborhood. So there will be a spectrum of housing here at different densities. if that answers your question.
Okay, well, thank you. But I think your answer is that the sort of limits are already set.
No, we're
Of
actually,
the limits.
sorry, we're actually, and Brian, weigh into, I don't mean to take over the conversation, but no, we are looking at other entitlement structures, not just current zoning categories, but also PUDs.
Okay, I don't have faith in like sort of input processes equitably surveying what the people of Austin think, and this is publicly owned land. And to limit the amount of people who can benefit from a public resource is unacceptable to me. And so I don't know how to make, how that, I know all your constraints, I'm just sort of expressing that concern, you know.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Crossley. Mr. Handel, I'll go to you next. I also want to say we have other staff. Feel free to come up and, join in the conversation if you all have anything that you want to add. Feel free to pull up. Thank you all. Mr. Handel, please go ahead.
Is it, I don't know if it's too early to ask, but I was curious if the intent here is to be, all income restricted or a mix of market rate and income restricted. Do we have a sense of that? And I'm also to add another like little wrinkle to it. I partially asked because in my neighborhood they're doing the AISD is doing this Anita Coy repurposing redevelopment where there's affordable housing, but there's also revenue from the market rate housing that's being fed back into public, I mean, specifically there into the budget of AISD. So I was curious here if there's an angle there that there could be revenue here that could be used for from market rate development similar to there. And like I said, I don't mean all. I just mean like a mix, as I've seen in some other developments where that could be used to fund if further anti-displacement or anything like that. I'm just wondering, is there a story here? Is it too early to ask?
Your call.
So these properties, at least a large percentage of these properties were purchased with Project Connect anti-displacement funds. So there are considerations already for that. There needs to be anti-displacement mitigation strategy around these properties. So yes, there will be income restricted affordable here, but it's not what we're looking at is mixed use. So we're looking at creating a mix of opportunities at different
mixed use or mixed income.
Mixed use and mixed income.
Okay. Because I was just curious. I don't know what funding is available. So it's like if we have X amount of dollars and they can pay, and they would cover the construction of, I don't know, an amount of income restricted units. Could we build on top of that and generate more revenue for increased anti-displacement funding that way? Is that possible?
And I think if I can jump in, and Margaret Shaw, project manager, absolutely. And it was good to be here earlier, like your comments about homestead preservation districts, all that. This is our first presentation to y'all. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. So we're super early in the process. There will be an entire financing tools in the toolbox, and I hate that phrase, but it is true. So as we come forward with a 125-acre development, we would be back with you, and that concept is certainly valid about how do we make a market rate also support affordability, but we also have a long list of the benefits that folks want to see out of this project. And as Brian alluded to earlier, it is not feasible today. So if we could push a button, the market isn't there to support all of this. So what we also are building in time to figure out how the market's going to come and want to partner with us, and also look forward with the list of that community benefits. But I think what we'll be back here to talk about over the years is going to be the trade-offs of how that works. And then Sean, did you want to add anything from housing's perspective?
Yeah. I'll just add that this is definitely going to be mixed income. What that looks like across the site, we're not sure yet, but from housing's perspective, we have the 18-acre lot on the land. There's going to be housing dispersed throughout that site. And for housing's perspective, particular buildings will be likely majority rental like restricted, right? Across the site, of course, there's going to be more mixed income. Yeah.
One more question. And this is maybe a little related to what Jay said. I hear a lot there's a lot of talk in the city about concerns about property taxes and things like that and how it relates to affordability. And I just wonder if the city, especially when doing developments like this or when we're doing other development related community engagements, do we ever engage with or talk with people about the potential benefits of when we generate revenue and how that can help? Because like right now we just came out of this, you don't have to go on a soapbox too much, but we came out of a tax rate election where people rejected an increase in property taxes, and that has consequences for everybody essentially. And we kind of kicked the can down the road, but you have this problem in the city where we need to pay for things, and the things that generate the revenue for that are mostly going to be dense multifamily and commercial mixed use development. Like those are going to be the big money makers for the city to help pay for some of these needs. And so I'm just wondering, would it help at all in the community engagement? Are we doing it? And would it help if we could communicate that somehow to people that, hey, these things may help? I think right now, a lot of times when people see, if you see a new building going up in your neighborhood, a lot of people only see the downside of it. But it's like, if that's what helps pay for the schools and the roads and the fire and the EMS and all that other great stuff that we want, especially when the city's in a crunch, maybe that really helps change how people think about these types of projects. I'm just wondering if that's something that's been considered or.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely part of the community engagement strategy is to talk about pros and cons and the what's in the toolbox, so to speak, in terms of financing.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the rest of the city, but I can tell you in this one, that is part of our messaging strategy.
Okay, thank you.
I would also say one of the benefits of the community engagement has been we're also bringing educational tools from all different, at the resource fair we had, trying to bring some of the tools that the housing department has to educate people on property tax issues, how to do home repair programs that are available. So we're trying to make this certainly a conversation and a two-way discussion about what resources are available and what's possible. So that's also part of the conversation. It's bringing educational resources too.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Other committee members with questions or comments? I'll go ahead and make some quick comment/question. One, I just wanted to mention that I think I would be remiss if from the CAC side, I did not share the fact that, this is where it gets really complicated, but part of the Tokyo Electron site was purchased using the anti-displacement dollars. One was the HFC bond dollars. It's all different pots. But, from the CAC perspective, when we had dedicated money for acquisition, we really wanted to see some real income restricted housing there. And hopefully that will remain a priority. To Mr. Handel's point, I think our expectation will be mixed income, of course, that we'll have some market rate units and affordable housing. On a site this side, we also understood when this was approved that it will be mixed use as well. So it's not going to be just housing. There will be probably other uses as well. But as long as we can really maintain that commitment to that deeply affordable that we were hoping to get from this site, I just, again, would be remiss if I did not mention that. The other thing was a question, maybe it's too early. We'll definitely get y'all back. This site is kind of just would not have the kind of infrastructure internally to the site that's needed, right? I'm thinking in the past when we've done something of this site, Miller being an example, we've done a TIF or tax income and financing to actually do the infrastructure. Just this is going to need electric, water, wastewater, gas, everything. There's nothing on the site, particularly for the kind of densities and housing we're talking about. So I guess, I don't know if y'all are there yet, but understanding how will we figure out the infrastructure? Because otherwise the infrastructure cost is going to be pretty substantive for something this huge.
Are you asking that as a question or are you saying that as a statement? Because I agree with the statement.
If you've figured it out, I understand if that's like something that's in the works.
Not figured that out. What I will say about that is that in our part of our planning exercise is to identify the potential density for something like this, to use those densities, not to report out on what that development will look like, but more to set what the utility requirements would be across all those different utilities. And we kind of showed you that map. But we have a civil engineer who's looking at what those densities are, doing a map about, where are the entry points for those utilities? What are the densities? What are the betterments requests that are ongoing? Did they consider the density for this development? If not, what, do we need to make those service extension requests? That's kind of part of our effort right now, is to bring that utility at a minimum to the site. And then that, as we move into how much market rate, what are the kind of profitability things that are profitable product that is able to deliver those services. That's really why we're focused on, creating a mix of market rate and affordable housing, is because those market rates, theoretically, when they're feasible, they generate enough profit to deliver those services. So that's part of that, that mixed use.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to assume this is already happening, but I'll make a comment that hopefully, as part of that is coordinating with ATP for infrastructure on the Riverside corridor, just because once we're doing light rail, we'll have to do infrastructure upgrades to meet whatever our projected infrastructural needs would be, so we're not digging up the street twice. And then similarly, the ballpark, which I know is not called the ballpark anymore, but it's the development northeast of Riverside in Pleasant Valley was upzoned a while back. That project is also semi under construction. So we know that there's going to be a big node of advanced infrastructure needs there as well. And they're probably going to have to update as well. So I guess as the corridor is developing, just making sure those large projects were aligned, and wherever we can double dip, let's go for it.
Most definitely. And I do want to get back to one of your other comments real quickly too, but I will say, like, we are in conversations with Austin Energy Watershed and Austin Water Utility, as well as Austin Transit Partnership. So we just got out of a meeting talking about betterments and how we get utilities to the site. And this is its own project, and I don't want to give it an identity like other redevelopment projects that the city has done. But I think the good thing about our team is we have a good track record in Miller and Colony Park, which was in the redevelopment division. So hoping to apply that lessons learned to this process too. I did want to just note, and I apologize if we did not stress this enough, deeply affordable is a priority on this site. Shaw can speak to this too. It is a priority. It is part of the anti-displacement strategy for this property. I think what we're working on now is how deeply affordable and how wide that deeply affordability would be spread across the site.
Ms. Berry, other folks with questions or comments? Well, thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll make sure we give you an opportunity, or give us an opportunity to provide feedback again. Thank you all so much.
We're looking forward to coming back. So, and we're very happy to be here and make these relationships. So if y'all can give us feedback too on, are there community members we should be reaching out to? How can we make better connections in the corridor? We'd love to hear that from y'all.
I appreciate that. Mr. Barthmuller, hopefully you can help make sure that we're connected, and also share maybe information regarding our ETOD working group, if a working group or the Light Rail working group, either one of those two. I don't know which one would be appropriate, but we can continue working for offline conversations as well. Thank you all so much. Committee members, to be respectful of everyone's time, would anyone have a concern if we move the working group appointments and drawing lots to next meeting for the two action items? Just to let folks know, for the drawing lots, for folks who joined the CAC after, we have term limits. You'll just be drawing it. It'll be random. We'll work with y'all next time to do that. Thank you all for your patience. Staff, any critical updates that we want to share today? This includes Ms. Artesia online as well.
Hello. Hi, thank you. I can share an update from CAT Metro. So CAT Metro goes through 3 service changes per year. Right now we're doing our August service change. So if you can take a look, I'll share the site right now. Take a look and feel free to share your thoughts. We'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Thank y'all.
Seems like I think we don't have any ATP or city, any critical city updates that we want to provide today.
Hi, Peter Parthmiller with the City of Austin. I do just want to mention again the Housing Affordability Fair, which is Saturday, the 11th, at Conley Guerrero Senior Activity Center, which is on the east side by Pagnalis and 7th Street. And yeah, Housing Department, Planning Department will be there. We'll have a lot of resources for residents and in the neighborhood. And it'll be a fun time because there'll be balloons, I believe, and face painting, that sort of thing. So bring your kids. But yeah, so I'll share details with Giannis and Sophie, and they'll get them out to the committee.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Barthmiller. Future meetings and agenda items. Anything that folks want to bring up? I know we have a bunch of things in queue. Just to let you all know, probably this is in planning. I cannot confirm it, but likely we'll have the Austin Transit Partnership team really help us go through where the light rail project is. I know it's been a while since we got an update and there's just a lot of moving parts. We'll try to combine it all into one meetings to have a really comprehensive conversation. And I know there's other items that are in the queue as well. But is there anything that folks want to mention at this time?
Have we ever had the housing blueprint update?
And that should be ready. We can actually bring it. If we do this May, it might go to June, but we'll have a conversation with our housing department to be able to bring that back.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Last thing I'll just mention to give you all a quick update. We had two items that had come from public testimony. One was looking at the application process for the CAC. Our staff has really worked in the background. They'll bring it to us soon to get some feedback as well, looking at how we can improve that. So that's great. Staff really heard that and taking action. And then same goes for minutes. We did some fixing for our minutes. We're going to be bringing that for action back as well. It'll just be procedural, but we want to make sure we're using a standardized format for how we're noting public testimony in our minutes. Okay, if not hearing any. Oh, yes, that is actually a good reminder. Thank you, Mr. Baggs. We will also have elections coming up as well. I'll probably try my best to send out an email from staff so y'all can see our elections are supposed to happen in May. Yes, in May, I think is when we're required to have elections for officers for CSE. So I'll definitely make sure if somebody's really interested in stepping up or doing something, please shoot an email to staff. We'll make sure that we're taking it into account. Yes.
Can you remind us what the roles are?
Yep, we have 3 roles, chair, vice chair, and secretary. So it's simple in some ways. Yeah, it's easy. Okay, not hearing otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the CSE at 7:08 p.m. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.